There's Copana.
Well, everyone, hello and welcome to our October detour of the Episcopal Old Burying Grounds. We are so grateful to our friends at Christ Cathedral for allowing us to be out here today. And especially grateful to our tour guide, Bob Boss, who's going to be showing us around. Before I open it up to Bob to take us around, I would just like to announce a couple of Bluegrass Trust events that we have coming up. October 9th, we have our member guest party. If you have received an invitation for that, we hope to see you there. On October 30th, I hope you'll join us and our friends at the Lexington History Museum for our lecture, Lord Byron's Move to Hopemont. And then, of course, in November, please join us for our detour. We're going to be detouring a Richard Eisenhower house over in the lakefront neighborhood. So I know you're going to mark all those down right now. And we look forward to seeing you in each and every one. And now, Bob, if you please take us around in a way.
Gotcha. This property was purchased by Christ Church Cathedral, the Episcopal Church downtown. Bought in 1832, right at the end. And it was meant, and it serves as the burial ground for the church. Primarily, we bought it to enable the expansion of our church building at the corner of Upper and Market Streets. That was in 1832. And then, with great surprise, 6 months later, an epidemic hit Lexington, Kentucky with cholera. So that changed a lot. By that time, most of the plots were covering at least most of the area. It wasn't densely purchased out by that time, but it was purchased out enough that only people within the church who died were allowed to come in and bury within the boundary of our cemetery. So what happened is that did not influence anybody whose family member died, because they were told, go to the nearest cemetery and drop the bodies off. We'll bury them there somewhere. And that's what happened. Our church experienced, our church of 150 lost 50 people in that epidemic. Approximately 150 plus more died and were buried. And we have not identified positively or deeply found yet exactly where and when, where those bodies are. Our first effort has given us 80% assurance that we are in the right spot along that fence line that borders Elm Tree. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that's what this is. At that point in the history of Lexington, we were known as the Athens of the West. You can't hear my microphone.
Just then. Just say what you just said. Again.
Okay. What did I just say?
Athens of the West.
Athens of the West.
Athens of the West, which means many of the founders, many of the people who are responsible for the existence of Lexington were here. And when this was bought, we were in the country. There wasn't much development. And so we thought, boy, this is great. We're going to be in great shape. Then the end of 1833, we had a lot of sad experience and a lot of shifting of attitudes, I think, to leave. Eventually, we buried over 700 people here. Some of those were like 150 or so were transferred from our church, which is the reason why we bought this, and reburied over here. There are many reburials in here, and there are a lot of bodies that have been removed to Lexington Cemetery, approximately 130 or 40. So we have a lot of shifting going on. But nevertheless, the remainder is we have approximately 600 bodies remain here. And if we're eventually going to be counting, we had a lot more who are unnamed, unmarked. There's only one marker that will be in that section. It will be the marker of London Farrell, who is the Baptist minister of the First African Baptist Church, which is 2 blocks down there on what used to be Dewey Street. And London Farrell took it on himself to bury anyone who wasn't to have been buried within the boundaries of the cemetery. And he faithfully did that. One of his incentives was his wife died on the 7th day of the epidemic. He buried her. 20 years later, he was buried that week. We're getting a lot of noise. So that's basically our basic history here. That cottage, which we will end up, you'll be able to see, was built in 1867 primarily to house a sexton who would take care of the property. Sounds good, it never worked. They liked it so much that they lived there, went to work somewhere else, or did anything but take the kind of care that it needed. We had several who were very good. A grad student at UK who in the 40s finished off and actually added a bathroom. That was a good point. So we had that. The longest lasting caretaker was a man named Breeze. The Breeze family lived here from about 1837, 10 years till the grad student from UK came in 1937. I'm going to get these dates. That's why I have the book. I've got to check it. So that's basically what happened. We'll talk more about the cottage when we get there. I'm going to just give you another layout of what we are now. And I'll tell you, we know where the boundary of the cemetery is. It's a fence line over there. And where these trees are, there used to be a fence. And that fence divided our property, which is about 2 acres, from the old Catholic cemetery. Now that was started in 1808. And about the time they did it, where these trees that are right on the next row of trees, that's where the church was. It was the first brick church in Kentucky. It was a Catholic church. They left that and built St. Peter's, taking the bricks with them, by the way. The only bricks they didn't take, they took, and in the corner, they built a house for a widow and her 2 daughters to live in until she died. And she did. So that's the history, basically, of the cemetery. It primarily serviced the Irish immigrants who came into Lexington. So if you look at whatever is left, the city took that over 75 years ago.
In the 60s.
Wanted to put a recreation area in there with the provision that they would move the bodies. They did. They had a basketball court where we now have a labyrinth, which is in the far corner. And all the rest of it, the church building was gone in 1838. They pretty well deserted it and said, we're just leaving it, and that's it. The city operated this as a recreation area for about 50 years. And after the 50 years, they wanted to put the stables here for the city. So they started to dig on the body. Moved, started to dig found the body 3 times. 4th time they had everything packed up and they went to the Catholics and said, we're out of here. And they left. What I believe now is what they found were bodies that were along this fence line where they wanted to put the stable. That was Kincaid Alley. Mr. Kincaid, who owned the Living Arts and Science Center house, wanted to have that as an alley. He also allowed, I believe, burials during the cholera epidemic. Those are the bodies that were discovered when the city was coming in. I do believe the city honored their commitment because we have a whole list. When they left, they took every headstone remnant, put it in a display area up here and set it in concrete. So that's the story there. And in 2007, we started the London Farrell Community Garden. That garden has been operating successfully for the last however many years that is, almost 2007, 20 years. Thousands of pounds of vegetables go into the adjoining community, which we find, and it's the term, are you familiar with the term of a desert?
Food desert.
Yeah, that's basically, there's no real good grocery source. So we have fed many people, and they still do. Half of that garden is personal, the other half is where they grow for others. So that's what happens over there. And I would not give Bill Swinford just desserts if I didn't say we added in 2000 a memorial for the 11 Revolutionary soldiers who were buried here. 6 of whom have been moved to Lexington, but all 11 are honored where you see that flagpole. So that is part of what we do. We are very active, as demonstrated by the fact we did eliminate our fence.
The city also leased that to Sayre School. That's where I played football and tore my meniscus in my knee. That was a
Probably
practice
one
area.
of those gravestones. Never mind.
How much of this do we own now? How far over that way?
All the
To the
way over
fence.
to the fire department.
Okay.
Yeah,
What I
it's
thought.
4 acres. Adding, that's 2 acres. This is 2 acres.
Right.
So we have that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the burial. I'm going to mention Anita Redding. Does anybody know who she is?
Yes. Right here.
Would you raise your hand? If you think these headstones are looking good, they do, because Anita has been working for over 3 years, coming here and cleaning. So I want to give you a hand. Tirelessly, but not in heat, right?
Right.
When it's hot, we have to give it up. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I have a few favorites here, by the way, of the headstones. So
Okay.
I'm glad to hear you're going to be talking about.
I'm going to
several
tell
of
them about one of them when we get to it, because it's the best story
Ever.
I think in the whole thing. There's another good story, and if you can see a rounded headstone, I'm even with it right now. It's just inside the fence. It has a hedge apple on the top. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That headstone is the daughter for Sarah Morton. You know the Morton name. You know maybe about Lord Morton. That's Lord Morton's daughter. Lord Morton's daughter was married to Apostle Waite, but I don't think she thought it was a good enough name, so she kept hers. She also is the only Morton who was not going to permit anybody to move her body to Lexington Cemetery. The other 6 or 7 that were buried here already are over there. And they tried everything they could, including getting her in front of her grandmother to have her grandmother talk to her. She couldn't talk to her. She said, I'm not going to spend another dollar on my burial. Right here or nowhere. So that's why I love that headstone and the person in it. And if you're able to read any of these headstones, again, thank Anita, because they were so, and the ones that are left are very, very needed. I'm going to move over here if you want to come.
Behind you.
How many of you are familiar with the name John Grimes? John Grimes was an artist. John Grimes is buried right here. John Grimes was a student of who? Anybody know?
Matthew Jewett.
Pardon? Matthew Jewett. Matthew Jewett took him into his family and taught him how to paint. And one of the results, well, this is John Grimes, the painting Matt Jewett painted of John Grimes. The painting that John Grimes did of Matt Jewett was displayed, I believe, in Louisville, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. That's why, and this is in the book Bill Swinford's Mother Rose. So I better not make any mistakes, because he will then have to deal with me. So that's why I wanted to come here. The painting I just showed you of John Grimes is now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So that's how he's represented and remembered. Pardon? He hung around as a child around Matthew Jewett. Matthew Jewett was chosen one thing at a time. He originally started with charcoal and pencil, and then graduated to fluid. And Matthew Jewett turned it through the whole thing. So, and he would have dinner with them, and he was very close to them, and that's how they lived. But he was born right here in the Bluegrass, and this is where he ended up. He did go back wherever. I'm not sure. It's somewhere in Kentucky. He wrote his own biography in this book, but at that point, the painting wasn't displayed anywhere. I'll have to get that answer for you. So Jackson, I'll get that to Jackson, then we'll. So let's walk over. I'm going to take you over to this, what looks like a miniature mausoleum. This is the remembrance stone that was designed by Gideon Tryon for his mother and father. His father died. You see, he was Gideon, and Matthias Gideon, Mike Tryon, died in the cholera epidemic. Gideon had no place to bury his father. A friend gave him this plot. He buried his father. His mother died a few months later. They are both buried here, and then he designed this in honor of them. Does anybody know what else he designed that is within walking distance?
Old Morrison.
Pardon?
Old Morrison at Transient.
Old Morrison at Transient. That's his design. He also did another building down in Frankfurt. They think it's called the Capitol. So, he's done a few other things, but that's who Gideon is. His father also helped in one of the buildings of Christ Church Cathedral. but this, we wanted to make sure you saw that. I'm going to mention a headstone right now and not walk you over there. Right behind this lady, you see a tall headstone that has a line on it. Name is Lockwood, and she was killed when her stagecoach to Louisville turned over, and she was killed. Okay. Many years ago, if you see that line, that headstone had sunk to that line. So what I knew about Lockwood before we hired an archaeologist to spend his summer digging up every flat stone and raising stones out of the ground, the Lockwood that you will read about up down to that below to that line says she was killed when her stagecoach turned over on the way to Louisville. And then when you look at what was under the ground that I didn't know, it's about her. She was a sweet, lovable, and loving wife who was good to everybody. So she died, and then he said, I better put some good stuff about her. And it's Anita, and that's my favorite headstone, mainly because of that story.
Well, it says, the wording is so formal. It says her death was occasioned by an unsettled coach between, Louisville and Frankfurt. It's so formal, her death was occasioned by.
Bob,
I love that
wasn't she the one who worked for Clay? Pardon? Was she the one who worked for Clay?
No, her grave we don't know location.
Paul in the Clay.
Paul was her name. Hull, H-U-L-L. I wanted to say, by the way, another reason I wanted to show you the first headstone, it may be one of the last headstones placed here. She died in 1873. That's about the time the last burials were held. The only reason somebody would be buried that late is they outlived everybody else, because from about 1855 on, there were no plots that they would allow us to sell. We were all filled up. Okay, I'm going to take you one more short distance over here. And there are two groups I want to show you. This group right here, how you doing, Jeff? Is the Hart family. And the Hart family, you might want to remember as being one of these founding families of Lexington. Thomas Hart was also the head of Transylvania Company. He's also the one who befriended Daniel Boone and hired him to clear the Wilderness Trail, which opened up the southern route into Kentucky. The northern route was Simon Kenton, who started everybody off up around Mason. So you had those two entrance points, both of them leading here to Lexington. The Hart family, Thomas Hart over here on the left, was the one who was with the Transylvania Company, and he was the one who basically woke us up and developed. He also had a hemp mill. So we have the whole family,
Oh, is that,
all the way.
asking about the Hart cleaners? Is that the same family? She was asking.
The same family as the Hart.
I don't know.
It is.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay. The reason I had my hand on this, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question. I have to tell you, I only have one ear that works, and it's this one, so
Okay, well, I'm struggling to hear you too.
Okay, I'm sorry I can't talk loud enough. This was actually in another cemetery that was in existence in a Presbyterian church, and was for the family, and that's why it has really no relation or relevance other than this part of the Hart family had been buried in the Presbyterian plot. We bought this. They put this here in memory of the Anderson and Pindle Hart family. Thomas Pindle Hart that's the father, and so he was still here. Does the Eleanor Grosh, does Grosh sound familiar? Their daughter married somebody, married Henry Clay. Henry Clay's wife was their daughter. And I'm not going to give you any more history than that.
Actually, Henry Clay was the daughter of Colonel Thomas Hart and Susanna Gray Hart.
Henry Clay?
Yeah. He
His
would have
wife,
been
Lucretia.
Lucretia was Thomas Pindle Hart and Eleanor Grosh Hart's sister.
Her name was Lucretia, wasn't it?
Yes, Lucretia was the daughter of Colonel Thomas Hart and Susanna Gray Hart. These are Lucretia's parents. The rest are her siblings. Correct.
Yes. Thank you so much.
And her good-looking sister married James Brown from the Brown family in Franklin.
Yes, one of them did.
Yes, Lucretia Brown. Having dinner with her lunch with her great grandson.
Okay, I'm glad you all were here. I learned something.
No, but he's got a lot of family.
Is that all in
Okay,
the book?
thank you.
So I got a question. I've always heard about King Solomon burying the power.
That's true.
The only one we know he buried here was John Postlethwaite.
He buried at the Lexington.
He buried a lot of people.
Now he's now over in Lexington. King Solomon, usually a lot of times when he was done with digging his hole, probably pulled out the bottle and slept the rest of the night there.
My great-great-great-grandfather was a medical doctor, one of the two medical doctors who did not leave Lexington during the cholera epidemic. And King Solomon put him on a leader because he broke his leg coming to get his family, and would take him to houses of the sick people in Lexington. So
He was a giving man, very loving, but he was problematic.
Yeah, he drank.
Human.
He was very human.
Let's see, what's the name of the book? Pie Maker,
sorry?
Lady,
Pie
and
Got the author.
Are you talking about? Yes, and I've heard you. I'm talking about Lucretia's wife.
Yeah.
But he was Caucasian.
I just wanted to know about this.
Because all the time I thought he was.
Yes, he was. I know he was. I didn't have to do that.
And the lady who bought him,
African American.
the lady who bought him was African American, had been his caregiver when he was a child.
She was the pie maker.
Yeah. He died in her home because after the cholera epidemic, she never returned. We don't know what.
She's the author of that book. We had her speak.
If you read my book, she did not take care of him as a child. She was younger than him.
This right here
She was younger than him. Yes.
is the Martin. This is the Martin family, and I'm here to tell you why it looks so shabby. We had an ice storm that dropped a branch off of here and knocked the hood off of here. It had 4 posts, one of them is right here, that covered this and shed the water away from this. We had an ice storm, and that was about 2007. Within 3 years, all of this peeled right off. So whoever designed it originally did a great job, but it wasn't long enough to outlive this. We have a lot of broken headstones over the years. Many of these along here were originally in that fenced-in area. That fenced-in area was to have been Henry Clay's family, and this magnolia tree is about where Henry Clay would have been buried. We just didn't have enough room for 80 feet of him. So that's a friend, as you probably are aware, gave the property at the Lexington Cemetery to Henry Clay, wherein his family resides with him. The cottage was placed on an area that I'm told many of the people in that were the Henry Clay family, who are now buried in and around his tomb. So we don't have any. The only person from Henry Clay's life, and I can't remember her first name now, is told, and she was a housekeeper. Sally Hall and her family came here one time, and they live out in somewhere around Paris. I was told, you told me about the socks.
Yes.
Okay, you want to tell them?
Sure, why not? Sally Hall was born in Hull, England, which is near York. It's on the east coast, northeast coast. She migrated to the United States with her brothers in 1804. They had families, wives and children. She did not. She was not married. She had no children. She ended up getting hired by the Clays. They had bought the farm. They were developing it, so they were preparing to move to the farm. They wanted to have a housekeeper. They hired her as their housekeeper. She would work for the Clays, I think, right up until pretty much her death in 1855. She was a fascinating woman. We have a receipt in the papers where this would have been about 1835. Clay pays her at one go for 30 years of work. Wow. I guess she lived in the house and probably had clothing provided by the family, so she didn't need a lot of money. But eventually, she starts lending money to Henry Clay and his sons. And so in his will, and I think maybe one of his sons' wills, there are specific provisions to make sure those debts are paid to Sally Hall. So she had enough money to lend them money. So we have in our collection a pair of black stockings that belong to Sally. They are silk. They were probably fairly expensive and may have been the only expensive clothing that she owned. I don't know. But they were expensive enough that her descendants or relatives, she doesn't have any descendants, she never had children, but her relatives saved them, and eventually somebody donated them to Ashland. So they are in our collection. And periodically they come out for exhibit.
Eric, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anything I would have told you is the remnants of what he just said. Because I remember you're the one that told me about the family plot right here.
And her stone is over against the fence in an area where they have a bunch of fragments that they don't know where they went, so they've created what they call the quilt. And each fragment is a piece of the quilt. Hers is over there.
So thank you again, Eric. That helps. I'm going to try to wrap. I'm going to go around and I'm going to describe a few things over here, and we'll go down and I'll give you kind of the last bit, then we'll go into the cottage. How about that?
That's good.
Okay. So if you want to come over this way, you don't have to come up this way.
Okay. I'm still guilty legged. I just only thing I'm thinking is I've got long COVID. My legs just don't have any stamina. So, I mean, when I walk at Green Run, I have to sit down and rest every 30 minutes. Rest for about 5 or 6 minutes, and then I can get up and go for another 20, 30 minutes.
Very briefly, Benjamin Grass is buried in the Lexington Cemetery. He was Jewish. His wife, Marie, was an Episcopalian. She's buried right here with one child. Not her own, Benjamin. Because after she died, he remarried and had another child. But they're buried here. The stones that are right over and look like rough stones are rough stones. They are the bottom stones for some kind of monument. Undoubtedly, They are over in Lexington. So they didn't die before they were used. We bought this property from John Hunt. John Hunt's family was to have been buried over in this corner. They're all in Lexington Cemetery. I think we had about 4 graves from the family that had been transferred over. All of the rest of the many are over there. So that's why this area is so blank, because the Hunt family had a big area reserved. I want to point three stones. The one monument here that Bill is sitting on, this one right here, and then right behind the tree is another one about as big as this one, and there's a common pattern on those stones. Anybody tell me what it is?
They're broken.
They're all broken. About the mid-1800s, we had a Romantic period. This is a headstone for that period. There's only one body that headstone represents. It's Mary Jane. That's all we knew. We have found out who the parents are, and I forgot their names. However, they had this headstone built because she was only 2 years old, and she died. So when Mary Jane died, this is typical of that period. The broken part is to demonstrate it's an unfinished life. The stone on which Bill is sitting was intentionally put there to sit down and be with Mary Jane. And they did. The very same thing is for the Robb family right here. The father and the mother are recognized, but the 3 children, all of whom died under age 10 at different times. It's the Robb family, and that's why they're there. The third one that I mentioned is behind that tree, and I think that's because nobody knows who that is. If you look at it carefully, and Anita, I believe that's going to be one of the stones. If you look at it, the only marking on that stone is a cross at the very top, carved into the stone. Someone just wanted many memories over there. But it would all relate. As you go through the cemetery, you'll find many under 10. You'll find one who is the wife of a person, and she wasn't yet 20, and she died. So, yes.
So were these deliberately broken to indicate a broken heart or a broken body?
Maybe all of that. Anything that would endear you to be with them, yes. So it's a sad thing to say, but it was done intentionally because of the sadness.
So the one behind the tree also has the same characteristic.
Exactly, it's broken off. So that's why, and they really are second only to the Lockwood headstone.
If you're in this corner, why don't you tell them about Carol Pettit's story about someone trying to dig up the...
Oh, that's the Voorhees. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to take you down here now, and then we'll go to the top. From here, you can see an obelisk in the corner, and what Bill was saying is we started this work in the late 90s and then 2000. About 2005, we came here one Saturday to do some work at the burying ground. Somebody was digging up the body. And it was one of the people who used to come with us. Carol Pettit, if anybody knows Carol, knew her, Carol Pettit immediately went into high gear and was talking to us, looked over. The next thing we knew, she was in front of the man saying, "What the are you doing here?" And he said, "The people whose body belongs to them in Louisiana paid me to dig up the body." She said, "Bury it. You don't have the legal right to do that, and it's not going to happen." He did that. If anybody knew Carol, she only had to say that once. She turned around and walked away. He realized, I won't go up against Carol Pettit. So that's what happened. So what they did, if you go down there, that's Cornelius Voorhees is the name of the person who's buried there. He's the only member of the Voorhees family not buried in New Orleans area. So they sent a brass plaque up to honor him up here. And I put that on whenever I did that, and took a picture of it and sent it to them in New Orleans, and they're happy as can be. So that's the story about Cornelius Voorhees. I mentioned before about London Farrell, and there's a brand new headstone right here that has two names on it. The names are Rhoda Hood Farrell and London Farrell. Rhoda Hood Farrell died in the cholera epidemic about the 7th day, and that was 1833. He died 22 years later in 1854 and is buried next to her. Those are the only two graves from the end of that on the other side of the fence all the way down to around where the bus stop is. And no other marker will be over in that area. We are almost certain that that land will be given back to us. We gave that to the city in a sale so that they could extend Deweese to Elm Tree Lane. When they did that, they had somebody from the Archaeological Department of Kentucky who validated that there were no bodies out there. That was always the garden for the sexton. So we know there were no bodies out there. She told me herself when I saw her, when I had them come over and x-ray for the London Farrell Garden. So that will be eventually fenced off and honored in some manner. And that will be determined primarily by the First African Baptist Church, as London Farrell was their second pastor. Built it up to 1,850 members, the largest church in all of Kentucky when he died. So he wasn't just your average person. He buried bodies here for 1 solid month. He saw to it that they were buried in a religious service as God would have him do.
Bob, it was the second largest funeral Lexington had ever seen, only passed by Henry Clay.
Right.
5,000 people
If you can
walked
imagine,
up from that church on Deweese Street.
imagine
2
that.
blocks.
5,000 people with their horses, wagons, where they were, because that 2-lane road wasn't there at that time.
That was in the fall of 1854.
October, yes.
October 1854. He died a month before King Solomon died.
That's right. And then King Solomon did that. Townsend, when he wrote Meadowlark.
He said he was there, but he wasn't there.
No, he wasn't.
He was there in spirit.
Yeah, and Solomon basically was they were close. How could you not be close to people with the hearts that they have? Okay, I think I'm done. I have one other. There's a fenced-in area down there that has another favorite of mine, and that is the Nolan headstone. Had 3 daughters. Of the 3 daughters, only one is buried there. The other two, one is in London, the other is in Alabama. The one who lived in New York chose to be buried here with Dad and Mom. And it's called the Three Sisters, are all honored there. That's inside that gate. And then there's one other area there, the only Civil War Union soldier is the only Civil War person buried here. And his name is Wheatley, and you'll see over there a very detailed list of how he died after the war. He was released from Andersonville prison, put on a boat that was built for 300 people, and the 2,000 people that were on it, it sunk somewhere in Memphis and is at the bottom, and his body's still there. So his father ended up putting a memorial stone here. And then which group of people? The
Daughters of the Union or something?
Daughters of the Union. Yeah. One of the very benevolent groups had made sure that they had a wonderful ceremony. So Lucian Wheatley is over there. If you've heard of the Wheatley Stables in New York, that was his father who founded that. And I guess he thought he was better off there than coming back here. So that's it. That's the tour. There are two. Did you open up the front door?
Not yet.
Okay. There's a front door that is very narrow, or you can go in the kitchen door right here. Probably the easiest way to go in is through the kitchen. How you all are going to fit, I have no idea. And I'll be in there somewhere to give you some idea.
Thank you all for joining us.
That was a great event.